Next, we will have the pleasure of hearing from Kurt Tong, Managing Partner at the Asia Group and former Deputy Chief of Mission and Chargé d'Affaires at the U.S. Embassy in Tokyo. Ambassador Tong is a distinguished 30-year veteran of American diplomacy. He has served in key roles across Asia, notably as Consul General and Chief of Mission in Hong Kong and Macau, and at the U.S. Embassy in Tokyo. He was also previously the ambassador for the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, or APEC, and this year was awarded the Order of the Rising Sun Gold Rays with neck ribbon by the government of Japan for his contributions in promoting the U.S.-Japan relationship and economic cooperation. We are honored with his presence here today. Please join me in welcoming Ambassador Tong.
Well, thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. It's an enormous pleasure to be here. I want to say special thanks to President Shukuri and to everyone from JITTI for organizing this really beautiful event with a great theme and a very important message at an important time. It's a little special and intimidating for me to be appearing after Ambassador Yamada and Ambassador Sasai, two giants of Japanese diplomacy. And I was deeply moved by Ambassador Sasai's remarks, and I'll try to add a little bit of a contribution to the conversation with my own reflections on this issue of U.S.-Japan exchanges, cooperation, people-to-people ties, and what they add to our two countries, to our peoples, and to society writ large. And I do this from a fundamental conviction that the people-to-people, I mean, we're all human beings, right? And people-to-people ties are built on actual interaction between humans. It can be digital, but it's best when it's in person. And those interactions are what create relationships, relationships create societies, societies create economies, create peace, and really help the planet in all of the endeavors. And one of the most important vectors for that people-to-people interaction, I'm convinced, for both of our societies is between Japan and the United States. I've had the good fortune of spending a total of about 12 years or so living and working in Japan. As a student, I did go to Canada for a day once, and then after that, the first time I left the United States was arriving as an 18-year-old in Tokyo and spending a year at ICU, and spent other years as a student there. Then worked as a businessman and during the bubble, which was exciting, and then as a diplomat 2 times at the embassy. That set of experiences led me that when I was the DCM at the embassy, I was irritating to my colleagues. I worked for Ambassador Roos and Ambassador Kennedy, and every year we had to do something called the Mission Program Plan. You might be familiar with this kind of bureaucratic activity, and the staff would write a report, and they always wanted to put the political issues first, and then the economic issues, and then they would put the people-to-people issues in terms of the priorities for the United States. And I would get out a very sharp pen and scratch that out and put the people-to-people part first and write down that the alliance is built on the goodwill of the people, not the other way around. And that is, I think, a fundamental truth that I still believe to this day. That led me, after leaving government, to spend a decent amount of time, in addition to making money with my great colleagues from the Asia Group, working on U.S.-Japan relations from a variety of NGOs. And I've had the pleasure to work with the National Association of Japan-America Societies, the Mansfield Foundation, the Japan ICU Foundation, and the Japan-America Student Conference, and some others. And each of those experiences has reinforced for me this fundamental importance of people-to-people exchanges and grassroots exchanges, because I think it's those millions of personal connections that really are what make the relationship strong. Let me give you 4 kinds of examples of exchanges that are, to me, in my opinion, very, very powerful. Professional exchanges. So there are fellowship programs and lots of different kinds of programs between the United States and Japan among people who've already finished their academic careers and are working. One of the most famous ones is the Mansfield Fellowship between government people, U.S. government people working in the Japanese government for a time. And the really strong commitment of both governments to keep that program going through 25 years of various budgetary difficulties really shows the fundamental strength and power of that kind of relationship building. There are lots of other fellowship programs, professional exchange programs through the Mansfield Foundation, through lots of other organizations, through the Japan-America societies that are extraordinarily powerful and important. One of them is the JET program. I could ask a quiz, but maybe you guys don't like quizzes, but I think you would be surprised at how many Americans have taught in Japan through the JET program. It's 40,000 people. That's enough to fill Fenway Park, right? With a few people left over. That's a lot of people who have been in Japan having that very granular personal experience. Got a couple of them that I work with right here that then become lifelong committed to the U.S.-Japan relationship. Extraordinary program. Doesn't exist. There are comparable programs in other bilateral relationships, but nothing that approaches the JET program in terms of its depth and richness. The Sister Cities program, it's not a program. It's a bunch of cities that all decided they wanted to have a sister. Now, why they chose sister and not instead of cousin or brother, I have no idea, but they're called Sister Cities, and there's 400 of these relationships. 400 people, groups of people from around the United States or around Japan decided they wanted to spend their own personal time and treasure to build a relationship across the Pacific with the other side. I think it's truly extraordinary. So student exchanges, professional exchanges, student exchanges. Now currently there's about, as I understand it, about 14,000 Japanese students studying in the United States. That's a lower number than it used to be back in the bubble days when companies were giving out scholarships for free to people in order to try and keep them in their companies. But it's still a really high number and very, very significant. And it feeds the economic relationships between U.S. companies and Japanese companies that are a foundation of economic strength for both countries. There's an increasing interest in the United States in studying in Japan and studying about Japan, even as more American youth become having deep relationship with their cell phone. A lot of them still want to go to Japan and meet Japanese and have those exchange programs, because those are really powerful programs. I was involved in something called the Japan-America Student Conference 40 years ago. It started in 1934. It's been going now well over 70 years. The relationships through that student conference are deep enough that when we had our 40th anniversary this summer, half the students showed up. That's a better than any university alumni event in terms of the proportion of people showing up. So these are powerful programs. I think I'm making my point. In cultural programs, is a lot going on. There's over 40 Japan-America societies around the United States. There's many America-Japan societies around Japan. They're doing cultural programming. They're doing, it seems like, who cares baseball, right? Well, a lot of people like baseball, and they build relationships through that, and it's extraordinarily important. All of that is adding to the fabric of the relationship, whether it's going to a jazz club in Tokyo or a bunch of Americans and Japanese watching some basketball or some baseball together. It's extraordinarily powerful. The last one I would mention is something Ambassador Sasai referenced, and I think is also unique and extraordinary in the US-Japan space, which is humanitarian exchanges. After the tsunami in 2011, there was an outpouring of support from around the world, but the country that really stepped up was the United States. Both corporations, US military, private citizens really all got involved, and there was just an outpouring of activity. In this very building, we had the APEC meeting the day before the earthquake. And then the second day of our meeting was like a few hours after the earthquake. And we suspended the meeting for a few hours just to talk about humanitarian response and what the APEC economies might do to respond to that. But the countries that stepped up, there were several, but it was really the United States that did that. One of the lasting testaments to that was the Tomodachi Initiative that is still running year after year, creating more opportunities for youth to visit back and forth. So I'm giving you all these examples just because I think a lot of people in this room, this is an audience that is interested in this topic. But I want to reinforce the notion that what you're doing in exchange programs and creating these people-to-people bridges across the Pacific is extraordinarily important. The last thing I'll say is about tourism. People underestimate the power of tourism, in my opinion. They treat it like an industry, right? It creates jobs, it creates a lot of jobs, but it also creates connections. And for many people, the first time they really learn about another country is as a tourist. There is really a lot of tourism going on between the U.S. and Japan. 2.7 million Americans visited Japan in 2024. That had an economic impact, about $50 billion. But more important, they came back with almost universally positive impressions about Japan, and they become more committed to that relationship going forward. 1.84 Japanese visitors from a smaller population came to the United States in the same year. Japan, despite its size, it's not that big a country, not growing that fast either, but it's the seventh largest source of tourists to the United States. And everyone having all of these profound cultural, personal experiences is extremely important. So in that context, I'd like to say, I think it's really important. I'm very glad that the U.S. government is represented here today. It's so important for governments to stay out of the way of tourism, but also support it and promote it, and really help it foster, help it blossom and grow as a force for good in international relations, particularly between friends like the United States and Japan. Because sometimes governments get it wrong. They don't, like the U.S., one of the things we sometimes get wrong is we don't subsidize our airports enough, right? And so sometimes it's hard takes a long time to get through customs. It's gotten a lot better in recent years, I must say. But that kind of thing can be an impediment to experiences. Sometimes they politicize it. There's a large country in East Asia that starts with a C that is politicizing tourism right now, and that's the wrong thing to do. But instead, governments can step in and really reinforce it, facilitate it, help information flow, and help more people participate in tourism. But really my main point, and I'll stop and we'll get to these very interesting panel discussions today that I wanted to just kind of introduce a little bit to you all in terms of the central theme here. The main point is that these people-to-people exchanges really provide a fabric for friendship, for cooperation, for development of relationships in ways that is extraordinarily profound. And I think probably, if anything, more important than what the governments do in the long run in shaping relationships and making all of our societies a better place. So with that, basically I'm telling you, everyone in this crowd is doing really important work. You need to do more, and I wish you every success, and let's all work together to really build an ever deeper relationship of exchanges, tourism, and lots of people traveling back and forth between our countries. Thank you very much.